Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to a new town hall session. I do hope that everybody can hear me. Let's do a quick voice check in the chat. Would be nice if some of you could type something into the town hall chat. Let me go in there and ask, can you hear me? Let's quickly wait for that. Test 1, 2, 3. I do hope that you can hear me. Some people are probably just checking in here. No, okay, 1 second. All right, test again. Can you hear me now? Test 1, 2, 3. All right, let's see. Can you hear me now? Yes, perfect. Okay, then welcome and hello to everybody. Hello to everybody who is listening to this later on YouTube. Hello to the 7th town hall that we do have here at OpenSUSE Miners United. This quick voice check here is sometimes a little bit tricky and sometimes it does not work right away, but now we do have it. All right. So then I'd say we quickly jump into the topics that I want to cover today that I do think are noticeable or at least really important to talk about, because we do have a couple of news here in our community. We do have a couple of new devices coming up, and we do have something that's personal from my point. And so the first thing that I want to talk today about is obviously just like how amazing it was that Scott, the instigator of the Bitaxe project, has been on the latest series of Pod 256. This is a podcast, and if you don't know this, just check it out. It's just so awesome. And maybe I can quickly invite Scott onto the stage to just tell us a little bit about it. That would be lovely. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Wanclu. Hey, how's it going? Well, yeah, Pod 256 is it's cool. The two guys, Rod at Big and Econo Alchemist that run are cool dudes. They've been doing it for a while now. I think a couple years. Mining news, commentary, state of the network kind of stuff. So been a fan of it for a while, and they kind of just randomly had me on the other day for the second time. So we chatted a lot about mining pool centralization and sort of what we think, speculation about what we think is upcoming for the network hash rate and the equipment costs and things like that. So I think Ben posted a link to it in the announcement. So if anyone wants to go listen, it's up on all the podcasting things. But generally, it's a cool show. It's worth looking at. And the two guys who run it are they're starting this thing called the 256 Foundation, and they are forming a 50c3, which is a like an official nonprofit organization in the United States, which allows them to take donations and allow the donor to write it off on their taxes. But basically, they're gonna start collecting donations, hopefully larger donations, and setting up kind of a incubator for open source mining projects. So
that's awesome.
Right up our alley.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, I was listening to it earlier today. Like, I was listening to the latest show that you've been invited to, and it was just so intriguing. It was kind of freaky from time to time, because you dived into a couple of topics, especially this topic of a individual that was proposing that he is doing password cracking with Bitcoin miners, which is kind of hard to actually prove. I'd say that he's actually capable of doing so. That was kind of freaky, to be honest.
Yeah, that was. I think the guy that, so if you didn't listen, there was on Pod 256, sort of the previous week, there was a guy who was claiming that he had done some SHA-256 password cracking with Bitcoin miners. I think he's just, maybe he was like looking into doing it, because I just don't think it's possible. And I think he was a little bit confused about how Bitcoin miners work. And we talked about it. I mean, we've had this conversation on OSMU a couple times before, with different people kind of curious, like, can they mine, different cryptocurrencies with Bitcoin mining ASICs? Can you, basically asking, can you do anything else with these chips besides mine Bitcoin? And 99.999% of the time, it's no. They really are application specific. So that we talked a little bit about that in the podcast, and just kind of clearing up what misconceptions it seemed like their other guest had.
I mean, it's quite interesting to think about it, and you not diving too deep into this topic, but you well explained it on the podcast, where you just explained, hey, this is really like the top-notch ASIC specific integrated circuit that you could do, because the chips that we use for Bitcoin mining these days, they're not even capable of producing a single hash. They can't do that. Yeah, which is counterintuitive. I mean, when you first kind of understand how Bitcoin mining works, it seems very counterintuitive that you can't get a single hash out of it. But then when you dig deeper, as we like to do around here, it becomes clear why that's the case. Oh yeah, definitely. But I just thought it might be a good way to introduce this to our audience here as well, and especially to this community, to just listen to other podcasts as well, because we are not the only one. Obviously, open source is amazing, but Pod 256 is something that I recently enjoyed to listen to, and I just suggest to the people who are listening to this later on or right now, currently in the audience, just check it out in the future if you like to, because it's amazing, and I do love listening to it.
It's a good one. And actually, after the show, I talked with Eco and Rod a bit about this, but they are, Rod is a co-founder of Bitcoin Park in Nashville, and Eco is moving to Nashville apparently pretty soon.
So for those people in the audience that don't know what this is, what is Bitcoin Park?
Bitcoin Park is it's physically a building, but it's a sort of conference center specifically for Bitcoin. They host meetups, they host like events. I think you can become a member of it if you live around there. You can become a member of it and go there, and it's sort of like a gathering space, development space. They do a lot of podcasts there, entirely centered on Bitcoin specifically, and it's become quite popular.
Oh, that's interesting.
They have lots and lots of members and are always doing something cool, it seems. The other co-founder, I think, is Matt Odell, who's a popular personality in Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, it's good to have you on another podcast as well, and to spread the word of OSMU a little bit more. I'd say, like, preaching to other people, hey, we do exist, and what we do is kind of amazing.
What we do is really amazing. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I got into this a bit on that. A little bit biased, but I got into this on the podcast. But oh yeah, Avril says Pod 256 is high signal, low noise. It's really true. Like, it's there. There's some commentary and some joking and stuff, but a lot of relevant signal for people who are interested in Bitcoin mining from some really solid people. It's cool. What I was going to say about OSMU that I think is just really important, and I talked about this on the podcast, was that Bitcoin is fundamentally, intrinsically open source. We saw that in the very beginning when Satoshi first introduced Bitcoin. One of the first, in the first sentence of the first announcement of Bitcoin, is like, it's open source. Like that's a core concept of Bitcoin, and one of the things I attribute to its success so far is that it's open source. That means it's permissionless, and anyone can start working on it, and anyone can verify how it works, and anyone can download it and run it. It's unlikely that Bitcoin would have been as successful as it is if it were closed source. So I think that while I talk about these like three pillars of Bitcoin, that's like nodes, wallets, and transactions. And then the third pillar is Bitcoin mining. And those first two pillars, nodes and transactions, they largely are open source and have been since the beginning and still are. And it's just sort of a given that they're open source and that's how they're developed. But mining has kind of fallen by the wayside and largely has been, abandoned. Like open source development has been abandoned. So one of the things that OSMU, I want for OSMU is to bring that back and be like, no, look, Bitcoin is open source. Bitcoin mining is a very important part of Bitcoin, and it can be open source too. And to like help secure that sort of Bitcoin ethos in Bitcoin mining as well.
Yeah, and I do think this is really important to talk about, especially like, as you said, like we do have those two pillars, nodes and transactions, that are broadly open source. But what about the mining section? I mean, it has been open source. In the past it was. Like it was this turning point back in, I believe it was 2014, 15, when Bitmain out of nowhere decided to, hey, it makes more sense to make this closed source instead of doing this publicly available for everybody to understand, and we can make a bigger buck out of it. And I think this is the only incentivise for an organization or for industry to actually adapt to this, because we do know most of the people, and this is totally fine, they do tend to just run the device in order to make a buck per day. That's the reason why they're here, and it's totally fine. I think most of the people, or most of those people that call themselves a Bitcoiners, they don't want to change your mind or your way how you do look at Bitcoin just so that you become a maxi. What we really want to do, and I'm just speaking from my personal point of view here, but is to spread the educational part of it and what you could achieve with it. What we already have achieved with Bitcoin so far is enormous. Like we do have so many people on the network that are using it, and sure, if you do compare it to other transaction systems that do live already on this planet, it's not that much, but it's driving into the right direction. And that's what I do think is really important, to give the people the power back to what they're actually doing and using here, because why the heck should we trust anybody that is not doing this open source as everything was intended from the beginning?
And just the sheer fact of having the source code and design files and things out there and open source, it just makes it that much more resistant to it being shut down or controlled or co-opted by some sort of, larger private interest that doesn't have, Bitcoiners' best interest in mind, or the people in general's best interest in mind, right? If it's, like as an example, if someone, a government that has influence over Bitmain were to say, hey, you can't be doing this anymore. You got to change it so that it doesn't work like that anymore. That would have a massive effect on the whole Bitcoin ecosystem, because Bitmain makes so many of the miners that are out there. It would be tough to come back from that, because at least till now, like how their machines work is basically totally a secret. And so the idea is that we can get it out there how it works and get away from that sort of centralized point of control.
Yeah, and obviously the future outlook would be to have a company who is producing open source ASICs instead of using closed ones, because this would be the ideal world that we all wish would be there in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely.
But speaking about this and regulations, for those of you here in the audience and later on YouTube listening to this, if you ever want to dive into regulations and how hard it can be to actually be a mining hosting provider, and I do know some of you don't like this topic. But I interviewed the CEO of Decentral a couple of days ago, and the video is live on my channel. So whenever you want to dive into this section or this topic of what happens or what kind of standards exist on the Bitcoin ecosystem, and especially for mining operations, just dive in there. I ask a couple of critical questions just with the intent of actually understanding what it takes for people or for a company to become something like a hosting provider. And especially I asked really critical topics or questions to get into it, because I also have this keen interest to understand why the heck are people even doing something like this if we want to live in a non-centralized version of it. Just saying here as a side part. But all right, I do think I want to dive into one of our recent new products that we have seen here in our community, and it's at the same time it's a new product, and at the same time it's not, because it already exists, but in a different way. And what I'm speaking about is the 0xAX. So if you're in this Discord, if you're not in this Discord, just check it out, discord.gg/osmu, and then you can join in here. So if you're listening to this later on, we do have a couple of member projects, and one of the most recent projects is the 0xAX. What this is, to bring you all on one point, is basically, if you have followed the recent podcast that I did here on the town hall, is a involvement of the Bitaxe flags. And the Bitaxe flags had the idea of creating modules with 4 ASIC chips in the size of like an NVMe that you can just stick onto a motherboard and use those daughter boards with just 4 ASICs on there to be kind of flexible, because you can chain them in a huge manner, like with 20, 40, whatever, how many chips do you want to put in there and how much power you can provide to them, obviously. But this was the basic idea, to have some modular approach. Turns out it is way too complicated and way too complex on a couple of points and way too many failures. So the inventor of it, Thomas, he just changed it, and now he calls it the 0xAX, which is one board, one big PCB that has 16 ASIC chips on it, and the version that he's currently producing there does have the most recent ASIC chips there, the BM1368. Those are the chips from the S21, so the most recent Antminer that we have seen. Obviously, we have not seen the chips on the S21 Pro, I believe it's the name. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. But yeah, we probably will dive into those chips as well, and very soon, as soon as we can get our hands on it. I just want you to notice this here, because it's super cool, and it's a new product or a new dive into the direction that some people want this project or this overall community to go in. And I also love to hear your standpoint of view on this, Scott. But I do have like 2 parts or 2 sections of people that are approaching me. The one of them are totally fine with the current design of the Bitaxe with just 1 ASIC chip, and they do think this 1 ASIC chip with a little bit of solo mining lag is totally fine. And they also tend to use the Bitaxe Hex in the future as soon as it is released with like 2.5 to 3 terahash, because this is a way where you can use like 60 to 80 watts at home, which is not too much from an electrical point of view. And then I do have this other section that want us, or hopefully think about, that with OSMU there will be products in the future that will be a competitor to what Bitmain is already producing. And I do have my personal opinion on this, but I want to hear what are you thinking about this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the chips themselves are still pretty expensive, and obviously we've been following pretty closely behind whatever Bitmain releases. But when you're talking about potentially $15 for each one of the chips, that starts to add up pretty quickly, right? Like for the Bitaxe Hex, if you want to be spending $90 on just the chips. But I do see the need for sort of a little bit beefier machines, right? And that's kind of the angle that we're trying to unlock with the Hex. The goal there is to, of course, like prove out the chaining of the the chips and how to power them in series, which is how Bitmain does it with the Antminer. Is both the data and the chips are powered in these long chains of series connections. So yeah, I would like to go that way. I mean, I think what Thomas has done with his projects and having multiple chips is absolutely fantastic. Like, I think that's exactly what I want to encourage people to do, is come up with some designs there. But as you can tell by looking at these designs, they're just more complicated. There's more circuitry that's needed for communicating with the chips in these series configurations, and obviously powering them gets to be more and more of a big deal. I think there's always going to be a place for these single chip or maybe dual chip small miners, right? Just in the fact that they're cheap and they really are like really, really low power. Like tiny little fan that's nice and quiet, and it's totally fine. But the goal here is to get lots of these out there, millions of these out there. So I realize that that's going to be a multi-pronged approach of making different ones for different people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There was someone, I don't know who they are. They created an issue on GitHub, which was an interesting issue we need to look at. But they posted a picture of their current setup, and there were 16 Bitaxes running in their setup. So this, people are hungry for this. So I realize that, and I think we're definitely working in that direction. So you can either stay tuned or jump right in and help out, like and make happen what you think should happen, like exactly what Thomas is doing and some others with their designs.
Oh yeah, that's definitely something that we always encourage people to do. But speaking about this, like you said, they do have like 16-bit Bitaxes on their setup. That's freaking amazing. And what I've recently received from someone out of the community, and I do hope that I pronounce his name correct. It's Sulfuroid, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, Sulfuroid. He sent me what he's creating. He's creating like carrier boards for the Bitaxe. So what I do have in my hand currently is a carrier board that can carry up to 4 Bitaxe next to them, like all in like one line. And you can put this in your server rack. So this is designed to go into standard size server racks. And it is like, let me see, 2U, maybe, from the height, because the Bitaxe is obviously not that high. And the only thing that you need to do is to screw on your Bitaxes, and then you do have 4 of them. And in your server rack, whenever you do have plenty of space there, and just plug in 5 volts to it and connect all of them, and that's it. It's super amazing. And even those small kind of products that we do see coming up in this community, it's just amazing, because we tend to improve currently the side of mining and how we approach the side of mining. But it's so refreshing and so lovely to see that we do have people that are approaching all the topics from a different angle, like as Sulfuroid is doing here with his carrier boards or with other projects that he does have. It's just amazing, and I just love it to be a part of it and could talk to you guys about it. Yeah.
It is amazing, right? It's like, like if people have some crazy idea and want to either learn how to do it, or maybe they already kind of have been dabbling in this, right? That's exactly what it's all about, right? We've got the designs to get you started. If you want to come up with some crazy solar thing, or you want to make a rack, or you want to have 16-bit Bitaxes and figure out how to power them all from one power supply, like,
why not tinker?
Just jump in and get started and figure it out, and like ask some questions here. I think plenty of people will be happy to talk with you about it and recommend things. Let's all do it. There's definitely, like there's some like electrical engineering rules, obviously, but other than that, there's no real rules. Just do what you want to try.
Yeah, that's amazing. And this also brings me to the next kind of new product. I don't know too much about it, but I'd like to dive into this. And we do have Be Evolved in the audience currently, and he released a new channel that's called RareX, and it is, I'm not really sure what it is and what it should do, but from what I've read so far is that I think this will be some sort of a Bitaxe on a cooler PCB, but with the intent to use solar. That's what I got so far from it. Do you have anything to add to this, Scott? Do you know more? I mean, maybe you
No,
can
no,
maybe you can
I
get
don't
him on
know more. I'm
stage.
looking.
Let's see if we
Yeah,
can get
we
him
got a
on
raised hand.
stage. Yeah, I'm trying to get him on stage. Would be cool if you want to talk about it. If not, it's also fine. Don't worry about that. Like, I just want to, like, for the people listening right now, I just want to give you a little bit of awareness, because I do know we have plenty of channels here, and those town halls that I do, what I try bi-weekly is to take a look on what's new, what's evolving, and then give you this 1 hour session where you actually can have a first glance of new things or different changes in the Discord, what's happening, what's brewing, what's coming up. Like, it's sometimes hard to stick to those things, and we do have a couple more new channels in here, but some of them currently in exclamation marks not worth talking about. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, it's just like some of them, they don't want to talk about this right now. It's there, they want to have it public, but they need to think a little bit more about it before they actually want to speak about it. And that's the reason why I just want to talk about the rare eggs, because I do think this is some sort of a cool design. And when I'm not mistaken, this Ra is some old Egyptian god, some sun god or something. So that's the assumption that I do have here, that this is probably something that has something to do with solar power usage. I'm not 100% sure what this is, and he's a little bit he's holding back, I'd say, on what he's releasing there. But that's cool. That's like he's trying to get our interest, and that's the lovely part about it. And he's currently writing in the chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like he's busy working on it right now. So yeah, we'll have to stay tuned for more about that. We've been teasing it a little bit, and I think we're probably overdue for actually making it official, but we are going to have a solar native Bitcoin miner competition coming up some point this summer. The idea, there's a solar channel on OSMU that you can check out to hear what people have been working on. But the idea is to make a project, whether you're just taking a Bitaxe and hooking it up to solar panels or making something from scratch, whatever you want to do, is cool. But the idea is that, use solar to mine Bitcoin. And the contest, we have, we'll have some probably Bitcoin prizes for kind of the people who, put together sort of the most performant and the most, exciting, ingenious builds. Hopefully it'll be fun, and kind of all in the name of just getting this information out there, open source, like helping one another, and mining, going after that stranded energy, which Bitcoin has a lot of promise to do.
Yeah, and also one cool thing, like as Scott said, it's cool to talk about this, and especially this solar competition that's coming up. Agent P, also a lovely member from this community here, he released also a GitHub repository called Grid Labs Solar Sim. I'm not sure why this name is what it is, but as far as what I can tell from what he wrote about it is that he tried to implement this this sort of, how do you say it? Like you try to achieve that you don't need a battery between your solar panels and your Bitaxe to actually power it off solar. And what he's trying to do is to implement some sort of code to actually make this happen. That's what I can get so far from it. Yeah.
Let's hear about it from the inventor.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Lovely to have you here on stage.
Cool. Thanks for bringing me up. So maybe to start with, fundamentals. I had a post recently about I was comparing the cost of Riot's new mining facility, their infrastructure build, how much they spent on it versus how much they spent on the miners themselves. And I wanted to compare that sort of on a first principles basis against the overhead that you spend on something like a Bitaxe or something related. And I realized there's actually a fairly close correlation between how much you spend on the miner and how much you spend on the power supply for the miner, whether it's the size of a Bitaxe or the size of a 1 gigawatt mega farm. So what I'm realizing is I think there's opportunity to push the envelope in trying to reduce the cost of the power supply, if you will, and reduce the number of components that go in between the power supply and the miner itself. And so I've also been interested in solar just because I love the idea of free power that's evenly distributed across the face of the planet. It seems a fairly equal and highly decentralized energy source to try to make use of. The trick with solar is you end up with a lot of overhead, just like the big mega mines and just like with a Bitaxe. I have a small solar setup already, just an S19. I think there's a couple other community members doing that as well. You end up spending quite a bit, not just on panels, but also on inverters and batteries and charge controllers and the wiring, physical copper to connect it all. Scott's original vision for the Bitaxe, like a long time ago, was just can you marry a chip to a solar cell, individual cell, or something very small. By doing that, you eliminate all of the other circuitry and components and infrastructure that goes in between the two. And so it seemed like an interesting avenue to pursue. Okay, so sorry, that's a lot of backstory. The point of the solar sim is how do you drive a solar panel at the right voltage such that you can extract good power from it without buying a separate MPPT controller or any other standard charging circuitry. So my vision in the circuit that this simulator tries to model is a solar panel with a capacitor of any size you want, just sort of wired in parallel with the panel, and then a miner in parallel with that, with a buck converter in between just to get it down to the right voltage. And the idea is, can you throttle the power consumption of the miner up and down quickly enough to keep the panel close to its max power point range, allowing for some inaccuracies and some inefficiencies and stuff. But if something like that were possible, it would mean that you'd have your power supply, the panel, and the miner, and the only things in between it are a small buck converter and a small capacitor. And obviously, the faster you can throttle the power usage up and down on the miner, the smaller a capacitor you need as a buffer. It's really just there to sort of deal with short-term fluctuations. So when a cloud goes over, you obviously don't know that the cloud is coming, so it's all reactive. So cloud comes over. When that happens, the panel will stop producing as much power. The capacitor holds the panel voltage near its max power point, so it doesn't immediately decay. But the voltage on the capacitor will start decaying as the miner pulls electrons off of that instead. And so when you watch the voltage on the capacitor fall, that's your signal to know, the power production of the panel reduced, and to reduce the power draw on the miner accordingly until you can steer that voltage back up towards the max power point range. So it's a little bit of a control dynamics problem, control theory problem. My eventual goal, sorry, I'll stop here for questions in a second. My eventual goal is to turn this into a bit more user-friendly of an app. Right now, it's just sort of very sloppily hacked together code, but the physics works and seems to check out with my by hand calculations. But eventually, the thinking is, maybe a website or some easy to use tool, and someone can say, "Oh, I have this panel laying around in my garage," or I found it for really cheap near me. What are the specs on the panel? They can plug in the specs of the panel, and then they have a Bitaxe and things. Okay, I can plug in a Bitaxe. Now, what size capacitor do I need? And if you plug it into the calculator, it should be able to tell them, hey, if you get this size capacitor, the whole system should be able to function smoothly, based on the power available. So, sort of really trying to eliminate the initial investment in getting a solar system working. But I'll stop there. That's enough.
All right. That's
One of the
yeah.
really-
Go ahead.
One of the really cool things that I think that this solar sim model will let us solve is dealing with the problem of how fast can we change the hash rate, because like a lot of the off-the-shelf mining firmware doesn't really emphasize changing the hash rate quickly. In some cases, they'll just restart the machine, or they'll like slowly ramp it up and down. We suspect that we can do it faster than that, but we don't exactly know how fast yet. But that will have a direct relationship to how large of a capacitor you need. And I think the solar sim tool will be really essential in sort of figuring out that control system.
So speaking about this, I think we don't even know how to actually do that currently on live AC that is actually hashing, if I'm not mistaken. Like changing the frequency.
Correct. This is on the Bitaxe. I believe it's not yet implemented, and I've not dug into Bitaxe firmware yet myself. Probably there are smarter people in the room for doing that than me, but there are other. I mean, on a standard ASIC with third-party firmware, there are options for not quickly but slowly throttling. And you can fairly quickly curtail on a lot of these third-party systems. So I am going to explore that with my current setup to see if I can curtail power and see what that does in terms of how much control I have over the system, and what I can get away with. But it does make me suspect that, for example, the 16 chips on a aux-ax, 0xx.
0xx, yeah.
Yeah, I suspect they'll be able to throttle a little bit faster and a little bit better than a standard hash board with 100 chips or whatever, but probably not as well as, for example, 16 individual Bitaxes. I have a suspicion that there's significant advantages to actually running single chip per board or per voltage domain or something. So something I'd like to explore eventually is are there significant advantages running single chip on the board instead of the large chains, specifically related to throttling speed and responsiveness. And if that's the case, it makes it really interesting for solar applications, because every solar panel is different, every setup is different, every environment is different, and so there might be... It would make the system very modular. You just plug in as many Bitaxes as you like, or as many as the simulator predicts would be a good fit for your panel, with the requisite size capacitor, and then you go from there. But it would make it very flexible and modular.
Yeah, it seems like the inventor of the QX, PyX, and the 0xx, Thomas, he backed this. He said like dynamic changes of AC clock works. He tested it, but he's also stating like changing the AC clock on a system with multiple voltage domains can unbalance the domains. And he tried to actually do an improvement on the balancing. But that's also what I think, like, as you spoke about this, HNP, it's quite interesting. I would love to, at some point, maybe in the future, we could create some sort of a graph or anything like that would actually show what's the difference between like using single chips and chain chips. Like, how long would it take for a chain of, let's say, 16 chips to actually reach the latest one of them? And what would be the imbalance of the overall voltage domain?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I have I have pulled data from an S19 on Luxor firmware just to see how quickly does that throttle, and I think it's about 100 watts per minute, if I recall correctly, which is really, really slow. I think they're extra cautious, and I do know the firmware lets you, if you take the guardrails off in pseudo mode, you can do it faster, but you risk destroying the hashboard if you get it wrong. With a single chip, I don't think you have the damage risk if you do get it wrong. If you put in one clock setting and 11 out of the 12 manage to get there, but one of the chips lags a little bit, then it'll just lag a little bit. But it's on its own voltage domain, it's on its own clock controller, and maybe there's an external control loop to kind of help coax it back into compliance with the rest of them. But it's not, I don't think, as catastrophic if you're throttling 12 of them all at once, or 12 individual domains rather than these large chains.
Yeah, that's definitely a topic to dive into.
That's a really interesting. I was just gonna say that's a really interesting point, which I think is what you were saying too. There's some squirrely dynamics going on there when you have all these chips powered in series, because essentially the voltage drop across each one is directly related to its hash rate, and so if one kind of falls out of line, then it could drop more or less voltage across it and cause problems for chips down the line.
What I do think
exactly.
Sorry for interrupting, but what I do think from the standpoint of view, what I do have, or at least from what I think I know so far, is adapting the ASIC frequency to a lower mana is way easier than actually rising it. At least that's my theory from what I do know about those ASIC chips and Bitmain's produced ones, because I seen like those different versions, and especially the immersion, not the immersion one, the water cooling ones, they do only start at a certain temperature, and then they only ramp up very, very slowly with the factory software on them. So this brings me into the thinking of like, I think it's not that bad for a chip to actually get less voltage and less frequency instead of ramping it too quick up. I think it's the way down is way easier instead of going higher from the frequency point of view.
Interesting.
I think that's right. I think I've seen that too.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, and I know Thomas has mentioned this too, but it's weird that the chips aren't like entirely deterministic. Like you might get a slightly different result out of a chip, given the same input a second time. It's really weird, but when you start to think that each one of these chips has 600 plus cores, and it's a massively parallel device with all these cores, and then there's this sort of the distribution of the work to each one of these cores, and they're being run at a very high rate, a very high clock speed. It does make sense that you would have sort of core level errors that could cause a slightly different output.
Yeah. One more piece of the sim, if anyone's interested, is why it's great to develop stuff open source in a large community instead of by yourself. Crypto Ice shared a bunch of solar data from his setup, sort of real-time power output, which I used as a proxy for irradiance data. And so that's actually a component of the sim is it runs two simulations. So it does sort of a worst case simulation. So a perfect solar eclipse followed by a few minutes of darkness, followed by the sun coming back full blast again. That's sort of the most difficult scenario to deal with from a power control perspective. But then I also have a sample of real-time data of several weeks, I think, irradiance fluctuation, and so you can actually run your pretend setup with however many pretend Bitexes you want on there through a sampling of real world data, complete with clouds coming in and out and birds and all that stuff, to get an idea of how it would perform in at least one real world sample.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, especially like having this ability of actually looking at different statistics from other people or sharing the results of what you already have reached is just impressive and needed for this community. And speaking about this, I want to go over to my last topic for today, which is some sort of a bummer to myself. It's for those of you who don't know, I still study, and I study business computer science, and currently I'm writing on my master thesis. And I do have my own branch of the ESP miner on my GitHub repository, where I created a diagnostics task. And this dives into the same chapter of what we are currently talking about. Because what I want to do with my master thesis, and what I'm already doing with it, is I'm writing about the Bitaxe project, and I'm writing about how the influence of those small-scale miners at home could be for the overall ecosystem of Bitcoin. And one thing that made some sort of a keen interest into it for me was, how could I actually write about this without having enough data to prove anything or to disprove what I wrote here? And that's the reason why I created a diagnostic task. And this will most likely not go into the main branch, so you will probably never see this in your update of the ESP miner whenever you want to update your device. But why I'm talking about this is that I want to collect data, and I want to do it in a specific way to actually be able to see how different ASIC chips and how different settings on those ASIC chips would perform, and what my task is doing. So it's just one more extra step that's working on the ESP. Is basically it's taking a couple of data, and if I do take a look right now into it, it's collecting like your ASIC model, it's collecting the current hash rate, it's collecting your frequency, the current of the ASIC, the voltage, the power that's coming in and measured by the inner device, as well as the chip temperature, and last but not least, your uptime of your device. And then you might be wondering, okay, it's cool, you're collecting this data, but what are you doing with it? So first things first, I do collect this data anonymously on one of my InfluxDBs here at home. And how I do this anonymously is one of the most important steps, I think, is I just use the Bitcoin address that's stored in the Bitaxe device, and then I hash over it with the ESP, so it creates a unique ID that I could never rework of. So there's no way that I can actually figure out what your Bitcoin address would be, just to keep it in this anonymous section. And what I'm trying to do with this is to have at least a dozen new Bitaxes on there. It won't change anything from a mining perspective. The only thing it does on extra is sending this data to me on a regular basis of like every 30 seconds. And then I can use this data, hopefully in 1 or 2 months, to prove or disprove what I have written so far. And I like to use this data, and maybe some of you who are listening or who are currently in the audience would like to try this out. And if you just hop into the Discord, there is a channel that's called Firmware. And in there, if you just scroll down a little bit, there's a esp-miner.bin and a www.bin. And when you do flash those two files to your Bitaxe, everything is basically as the most latest release. So the 2.1.3 or something like this. And the only thing it adds is on your settings page, there's a new check-in or opt-in button that you can use that's saying send diagnostic data. And this GitHub branch of mine is also obviously public, and it's you can take a look on it if you want. If you don't trust me, that's good. So then just go in there and read through it. But what you could do with it is just check on this diagnostic task thingy, save it, restart your Bitaxe, and then as soon as your Bitaxe hits a uptime of greater than 5 minutes, and that's one important reason, after that it starts sending data every 30 seconds to my server to collect this data and use it. And why did I talk about this 5 minutes? It's important because I tend to see so many people that are wondering about the bit-axes, what they're doing in the first 5 minutes. This chip and the way how you calculate the hash rate and the power consumption and everything else, it needs to even out. And I do think 5 minutes is a good first approach to actually use it. I might change it in the future, I don't know. But yeah, that's some sort of first bummer into what I'm trying to do with it, because I want to tinker a little bit, and in the end, the ideal goal would be to use this framework, to have plenty of people that use it, use this firmware, and I then can collect a couple of different data, for example, with different ASIC chips, with different frequencies, with different voltages, because I can then take a look on it and identify what is changing the behavior of the efficiency, for example, and the hash rate. Those are the most two important things to me in my master thesis, and that's the reason why I think this task is needed, and why I would love a couple of you to actually help me out doing this. And because I don't have I only have a limited amount of Bitaxe here, so I can't really use a real simulation, I'd say. Sure, I could plug 4 of them in, but then I'm limited on how many power supplies I do have, or how many more Bitaxes I do have laying around, and that's not that plenty. So, yeah.
It would be cool. I think, I will definitely give it a try, and I'm sure you can find other people here who would be willing to run this firmware and provide some, anonymous data for you to do this development. It would be cool to have, since you are also the creator of the web flasher, if there was just an easy option on there to install your firmware.
Oh yeah, I could definitely do that.
I think people would be happy to give it a shot. Why not? Especially if you got 16 Bitaxes.
Yeah,
I don't have 16 Bitaxes. Someone does.
I do have.
Ben has 16 Bitaxes at least.
I mean, the greater the number, the better, because then in the end, so the overall goal is, now I explain to you why I'm doing this, and it is kind of still the wondering, why the heck are you even doing this? So the second part, and the less interesting, to be honest, for me, is the part of tinkering and creating a theoretical, hypothetical analysis of what small-scale home miners could do, because to be fair, speaking about this is theoretical, and you can't really predict what would happen if you do have 2 million Bitaxes on the network. But I'm still trying to dive into this, so my master thesis don't look only like bullshit in coding. So that's the reason why I did the second part. But the first interesting part is to actually create a framework for ASIC chips, because we now have ASIC chips that we can use, and we do know plenty about them. We don't know everything, but we know a good amount of things that we need to know in order to use them. And what I do see is missing is a framework of how you can actually predict or even assume a good enough efficiency on what you should use your device. So my idea is here to create a framework to use all this data and in the end, this will also be publicly available to show to other people, so that you could get, for example, you could just go onto a web UI and you just click on a random ID because you don't know who this belongs to, and you take a look on his frequency and his voltage, and now you know, okay, how is his chip performing? So you can adapt to this, or you can use it for yours. And in the end, for us as I'd say like the creators, and I do call all of us here in this community the creators of every new evolving product in the Bitaxe or the OSMU community, we do have now this framework that we can use in order for a first point of view of where we need to look at and what we need to adapt in order to make a ASIC as efficient and as good as possible. And that's the reason why I want to create this framework.
I think maybe you just answered it, but Alex Royce in the chat has a question. What other data is possible, and could the data be used to advance other parts of the project?
So, as I stated before, like currently available data is like I use the BTC address, and then the ESP itself, it will, before it does anything else, it will hash over it using the SHA-256 algorithm and creates like a one-way hash algorithm, a one-way hash that I cannot recreate, so I would never be able to use your Bitcoin address. And then it just collects your ASIC model. So when you do have a Bitaxe Max, it just sends the BM1397. It's just an identification for myself. Then it sends the hashed username as an ID. It uses the current hash rate, the frequency, the current of the ASIC, the voltage of the ASIC, the power drawn by the board overall, and the chip temperature and the uptime. Theoretically, I could add more, but speaking about this framework, I don't think anything else is needed in order to make any assumptions on the efficiency or the usage of an ASIC. And speaking about future improvements, I'd say you could use this for whatever you want. And one of my biggest interests that I'm tinkering a couple of months now over is creating a benchmarking tool, because we do have those closed source projects. I think like Brains and LuxOS, they do have this, where you can just press a button and then it automatically tries to benchmark your end miner, and then it sets those individual ASIC chips to its specifically most efficient manner. And that's also one thing that I'm trying to achieve somewhere in the future, not with this master thesis, but somewhere in the future I try to create something like this benchmarking tool, which is not that complicated. It's just like that's what you could use this data for. Yeah.
Well, I have one other project topic that I'd like to talk about if we have time.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. We're now sitting at, let's see, 1 hour, a little bit over 1 hour. So then let's dive into this topic. And after that, we do have an announcement from Sir Vapes-A-Lot. And then we will close it.
Okay. So we had an OSMU member who ordered some Bitaxes. They came from the UK, from the Solar Mining Co. from Duncan's shop, and went down to Turkey. And I heard about this story afterwards, and it is kind of wild, but it sounds like basically the customs agents opened up the box and saw that it was a Bitcoin miner, they saw that it says Bitaxe. It's got a sweet logo right on the front. It says Bitaxe. And okay, Mustafa, maybe I wasn't going to call you out specifically, but let me see if I can invite you. There you go. Mustafa is the one who was telling me this story, but I'll just summarize real quick. But, it became quickly aware to me that, there's places in the world where Bitcoin mining is frowned upon. I know in Turkey it's actually allowed, but there was some issue with importing it without a license, blah, blah, blah. It kind of sounds like nonsense to me. But there's other places in the world where Bitcoin mining is, straight up illegal. There's places, I think it was like Venezuela, where they just straight up confiscated everyone's Bitcoin miners. So there's an interesting effort going down, and Mustafa maybe can talk about this, which he's leading, is to firstly create Bitaxes locally, so that you're just importing parts, and then locally the Bitcoin miner is created, but also kind of making this easier for others to do in maybe more oppressive parts of the world. So anyway, Mustafa, if you wanna talk about this.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you so much. I am excited to be here, actually. So yes, custom office just opened the box and saw, there's a Bitcoin miner, and Duncan made a great boxing. Like, the product was great, but it has a lot of Bitcoin content in it, like Genesis block and so on. So custom office just took it, and I needed to pay almost double the price. So I paid 400 euros to get 2 Bitaxes. I paid for to the custom office because they made some extra tax on it, and that was it. We need a Bitax without logo, without any other thing related to Bitcoin. So it is easier to get it from custom office when it's arrive in Turkey, Egypt, or something in Middle East. So yeah, also I will try to produce Bitaxes locally. I already ordered everything. I'm just waiting PCBs. So let's see what will happen. Also, Scott and I talked a little bit. Maybe we can create create like hiding Bitaxe. Like maybe Scott, you can continue. Like a Bitaxe is not like Bitaxe, basically.
Yeah, like a more stealth thing. I mean, originally when we first of all, thanks Mustafa. That's perfect. Thank you for explaining that situation. This is pretty important if we're going to decentralize mining and spread it all around the world and let anyone who's even remotely interested in doing this do it. Avril says the discrete axe. So I guess Bitaxe is becoming a household name in a relatively short amount of time. So, they could Google it. It's a very easily Googleable name, and you can figure out exactly what it is. And if the authorities don't like that, they could just impose a 200% tax or something like that on you to make it very difficult to mine Bitcoin, which is exactly what we want to empower everyone to do everywhere. So the idea that Mustafa had was, let's get rid of that sweet logo. Let's make it just, look like a calculator or whatever you want to call it. And so that there's just no issue. And so that these things can be sent around. And I also, or a heater. And I also, would like to see people empowered to build these locally. There's lots of places where I think it could be easier to import parts and build it locally and distribute it locally for tax reasons and just weird government reasons. So I'd like to see that come out of this, as well as the discrete act that has no name on it.
Yeah, I think that's it's definitely something that's needed, especially as we dive into a couple of namings for it, discrete eggs or basic eggs. Unfortunately it's something that seems to happen, and it's really sorry to hear this, Mustafa, that you do have this kind of a hurdle to get your Bitaxes. It's just a mess, and to be honest, I do think other countries will have the same issue, or at least will face them somewhere in the future. Maybe, we don't know. But this is definitely something that we could not align ourselves with. So, going into this route is something that we should do, yeah.
I have one more thought on the topic. I've been thinking for a while, I kind of by accident, I happened across a implementation of Tailscale that can run on embedded C. Gets compiled with would get compiled with the firmware. I haven't tried it yet or played with it yet. I've used Tailscale quite a bit, though. That's a fairly user-friendly VPN system. But if this were rolled into the Bitaxe firmware, in theory, you could actually have embedded Tailscale running on the Bitaxe itself, and so you could have a VPN protecting your Stratum traffic all the way from the Bitaxe to whatever pool you're wanting to connect to, whether that's Ben's pool in the States or your own version at a remote location.
Oh yeah, that's definitely also an interesting topic to dive into.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I mean, we all have sort of varying degrees of the luxury to just run this stuff, and I don't know if we can count on that forever, especially as Bitcoin becomes more successful and maybe there's more people that seek to stop that. Duncan says it was a white labeled box with no branding on the outside, but still they opened it and then quickly saw inside that, I'm so naive. I'm just like, oh man, like Bitcoin, open source Bitcoin mining, super rad. I want to create a rad logo and a rad website for it and like just tell everyone I can possibly tell about it. But that actually is, in some ways kind of a downside.
It's sad. It's sad to hear, to be honest. But all right, I think this adds up everything for today, and now I want to give the wording to Sir Vapeslot, because he does have something to announce for this Discord here. And not sure if you want to have this on the Town Hall recording or later afterwards. I'm not sure. It's your word.
Oh, yeah. No, this is fine. Yeah. So how's everybody doing?
Oh,
We're doing good, man. Good to have you here.
Heck yeah. It's been very informative. I've actually learned a lot from listening to all this. It's been interesting listening to Agent P and all the stuff that he's been working on. That's pretty interesting. But anyway, so let's go ahead and close this out with a little bit of updates to the website and to the Discord. So first things first, with the website, which it is opensourceminers.org, there is going to be a new page, and that is a rewards page, and there's a new funding page. With the rewards page, basically what it is, it just shows you what the Discord subscription rewards are, links you a place to subscribe to it, if, just kind of linking, getting everywhere, have a little database going of everywhere, that all the links to everything, basically. So that's going to be on the rewards page, and then also on the rewards page, there's a section that for subscribers, if you guys are subscribed, basically to redeem your prizes, you'll have to go to that link on that page. It's already on the website if you want to go look at it. Basically, you just go through there, fill out that form, and then we'll go ahead and get that shipped out to you. And
so for people like me that don't really actually even know how Discord works, like what is a subscription thing, and what does your money go to, and why should you do this?
Yeah, definitely. So that actually ties into the next part. So basically the funding page, so that basically explains a little bit more about what the funds, what we take in as donations, and then where they go to, like all the money where it goes. So for example, let me actually go to the page right here now. Let's see. All right. So yeah, basically it just says we're entirely ran from donations. Just a little bit more information about that. Basically, we use the projects that come in many different ways, from one-time grants, hardware cost funding to cut down on prototyping costs for grantees, like say for Mac Fighter, whenever we gave him a little bit of money for the PCBs for the Bitaxe Hex, and so just to make that a little bit easier on people. So, but also for different sponsorships for events and workshops, like WantClue has done as well. That's kind of where the money goes to. But the subscriptions, as far as that goes, if you go in Discord, there should be a section that's called either Server Shop or Server Subscriptions. What it does is it goes through, and that's basically just different ways that you can support us by basically subscribing to different tiers. So tier 1, is just the easiest way for somebody to do it. And this will go into a little bit more of the updates on the Discord here in just a second. But so because a lot of the updates are actually going to be doing with the tiers. But anyway, so just to go through that. So just, first tier right now is at $7.99. Second tier is $19.99. Supporter tier 3 is $34.99. But you can go through on there and it'll show you different benefits. If you go through and do just the first tier, you'll get access to exclusive channels, just the subscriber channels. Tier 2, basically a little bit of the same, but that's going to be updated here soon. Tier 3, again, it's going to be updated here soon, but self-explanatory. Let's see. So yeah, that goes through a little bit of what the website is updated to. Not really much has changed other than just getting those pages added on there. We did update a few links on the featuring section. So right now we have the Bitaxe, the Ant Sniffer, which is my little pet project, the Bit Halo from Duncan, Piax, and its different variants as well as the Nerd Miner. And then as well on the resources page, you can go through the OSMU wiki, different videos, which actually the town halls are all uploaded onto there as well. Contact us page for anybody who needs to contact us through like an email for anything specifically. And then just a store page that actually links to Ben's store to buy Bitaxes. But anyway, so that kind of ties out the website's update. So did you guys have any questions on that? Or
No, I
That's
think
awesome.
everything's
Thanks for
clear
putting
on
that
my end.
together.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay. But then let's go through the Discord. So basically, we're going to be doing a little bit, two new updates, basically. So the subscriptions are going to be changing here in a little while. They're going to be changing. I don't know exactly the time frame. It just takes a little bit to get everything all set up. But basically, we're going to be consolidating the tiers into basically 3 new tiers. The tier 1 is going to basically stay the same, except the price, which is right now is at $7.99 a month, is going to drop down to $4.99 a month. So it just makes it, accessible to even more people if they want to help out just in that kind of way. Tier 2 will basically be what Tier 3 is now. So what that comes with is after subscribing to it for 4 months, you'll get basically a free OSMU t-shirt and a free OSMU branded Bitaxe. That's actually pretty cool. It's gold and purple, and it's pretty nice. But that'll be going on to Tier 2. And the price for that, which is at $34.99, is actually going to go to $39.99. But then Tier 3 is going to be updated to a new system. And that one is going to have basically everything the new Tier 2 is going to have, which is the Bitaxe and the t-shirt. Except there's going to be a new prize that's coming here that'll be announced shortly. Scott and Ben know a little bit about it because I've sent it in the admin channel, as well as one clue. But that one is going to be the same time length as Tier 2, so it'll be 4 months, but that'll be $44.99 a month. So that'll come with, like I said, Tier 3 will now be a t-shirt, a Bitaxe, and the new prize, which, again, I'll announce here upcoming shortly. But did you guys have any questions on the first part of the Discord updates?
Nope.
Okay. Then the second part, which is going to be where I'm tying everything up, is we're basically going to be doing a new featured member program. So more details on exactly what that's going to be is going to be coming soon. But what it basically entails is that the community will be able to vote on who they feel has earned some recognition, basically. So say, Duncan for all his work that he done with the Bit Halo, or everybody with the OX Axe and everything like that. So that's going to be a quarterly program. So it'll run 3 months. Every 3 months there will be a poll on the Discord for basically everybody to go vote for who they want. Basically, who gets chosen, again, that'll be updated at a later time. Basically, who gets chosen to be voted for, I guess, because you have to put people on the poll. Let's see. And then basically, if you get chosen as a featured member, if you win the prize, what you get is a Tier 3 subscription for free, which will be the Bitaxe, the t-shirt, and the new prize that'll be announced soon. As well as you'll be featured on the website, as well as a new role that'll be on the Discord as well. Now, whenever it's going to be kind of like the Employee of the Month award kind of thing. So whenever the next 3 months rolls around, the Discord role and the website will be updated. But as far as the prizes, you'll win that forever. So, but that's basically all the updates that I have for you guys. Thank you guys for letting me talk to you. Is there any questions that you guys had for me at the end of it or anything?
So Sir Vapeslot started this Discord. He put it together, and that was almost exactly, it was a little over exactly a year ago, right?
Yeah, it was a year ago on March 31st.
So we just had like a 1 year anniversary, which it seems like it was forever ago and just yesterday that we had 10 people here. But that's a pretty amazing milestone. And we have, if I'm looking at this thing, we have 1,900 users. I don't know how many of those are bots, but this little thing has grown up pretty quickly. It's pretty awesome.
That it definitely has, and it's been insane since the first days that we were on. There was 30 members on the Discord, and we were like, "Oh, I don't know if we'll ever get to 100." Now we're at 19. Like you said, I don't know how many are bots or not, but it's definitely came a long way in just a year. It's insane.
And we've also Alex Royce is not a bot. So we have one confirmed non-bot. So that's
maybe
good
we
to
should
know,
we should do a specific rank for this. So some nice color, not a bot.
Oh yeah, we'll give you a special badge.
By the way, it's a good timing to speak about this. So for everybody who's listening to this right now, later on, so currently the verification system on this Discord. So whenever you as a new user join into this Discord, usually what we had in the past was a system where you need to approve that you've read their rules, and then you get assigned a role, and then you're going to be able to see all the channels. This would prevent a Discord from being blown over by bots and spammers and what else. Currently, we do have this feature deactivated, and I'm currently trying to get another version of this up and running. So expect in the next couple of weeks a new verification system on this server. But before I will activate it, I will obviously make an announcement for all the people that are in the server to adapt to it.
Yeah, we've been having some spam issues lately because I think we've discontinued the previous anti-spam thing, right?
Yeah.
While we're waiting for this new one.
Correct.
So bear with us while we do it. We'll try and delete those things as soon as possible. It's, especially on mobile, is really annoying to do manually.
Definitely on mobile. They need to. I mean, I'm doing mobile a lot because I'm mostly at work whenever I'm on Discord and looking at everything. So, yeah, I mean, doing some kind of update for Discord would be amazing, but they tend to lag behind on the mobile side, so which kind of sucks.
Yeah, we
There's
will
a lot
get
of stuff
there.
you can't do as far as administrating.
Yeah.
We will get there.
But yeah, so like Juan Clue said, we're definitely working on that new verification system. So.
All right. So I think
we'll have to test it out.
Yeah, I think there's nothing else to add from my end. Do you guys have anything else to add? Otherwise, we are sitting at 1 hour and 20 minutes currently. So I think it's a good time to end this town hall and maybe hop over into one of those channels to have a chat.
That's everything from me.
Sounds good. Thanks, Juan Clue, for putting this together. This is a fantastic idea.
As always, every week it's awesome.
All right, thanks.
Every 2
So-
weeks. My bad.
Yeah, every 2 weeks. That's correct. And we shifted by 1 week because once I was on vacation and not able to do anything because recording and doing editing later on Linux is still a nightmare, even though we are in 2024. So I need to use my Windows PC. It's a shame, I know, but it is what it is. Anyway, so thanks everybody for being in here. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for everybody who has been on the stage. I really appreciate it to talk to you and to listen what you're saying and always contributing to this community. And I always encourage everybody who's listening to this later on to check out our Discord. You can check it out on discord.gg/OSMU. And whenever you do feel like you want to get your hands dirty on a Bitaxe, just make sure to check out the Bitaxe legit list, which can be found on bitaxe.org and then /legit. That's it. That's my take on it. Thanks for listening in here. Thanks for the audience for being here. See you in 2 weeks.